right to row to center. Lundvik shoots. He scores! Johnny Lundvik does it again!
Jarvis in close shot. There's a goal. Seth Jarvis, the 17-year-old, short side, glove side, high, just under the crossbar.
Cutting to the front of the net, and they score. Reese Newkirk along the right wing just took the pass. That was phenomenal patience from Seth Jarvis and the Winterhawks.
Hey, this is Reese Newkirk, and you're listening to the Pucklandia podcast.
Welcome into Pucklandia. Pleased to be joined by Josh Critzer, the head cook and bottle washer over at PNW Hockey Talk. How's things going in over there with PNW Hockey Talk these days?
Hey Chad, good to be on with you again. Yeah, things are going well. We're kind of into the meat of the season, or at least starting to get into the routine a little bit. And I think you had Kurt on your last show, and he's been doing a great job, and really glad to have him on board and kind of helping us expand our coverage a little bit at PNW Hockey Talk. So yeah, no, overall things are going great. We got a lot of stuff in the hopper, and trying to just kind of navigate through all the. Sometimes my eyes get a little bit bigger than my writing fingers of wanting to write a little bit. So I've kind of got a backlog of stories that I'm working on. But all things considered, it's been a good time so far.
Yeah, no, I hear you there. That's why I had to switch to this format to keep it a little more. I don't have any half done conversations. You just have the conversation, keep going. It seems to work better for me. But
yeah, the transcribing of audio. If I last year I had an intern who was looking for some college credit and stuff like that. So I worked with him, and he was wonderful because he just. I could send him the audio, he'd transcribe the audio, and it made it easier. But the transcribing of the audio from stuff is probably my least favorite part of the reporter job, but that's the part that comes with it. So, but yeah, otherwise, we like it.
Well, if your brain's wired the right way, then, some guys are good at that. And it seems like the apps never really work quite right either. I know the ones I've tried to use, it's like...
Yeah.
Between we have interesting accents and different vocabularies and, talk too fast or any number of things. It seems like you had to go through and, correct it by hand anyway,
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And, they don't know the software doesn't know, the towns in Canada or the hockey lingo, or, when I'm doing a lot of my interviews, it's usually after practice or after a game. So you've got a Zamboni in the background, you got guys shooting pucks off the glass, and there's a whole wide variety of different factors. So yeah, I've found that I spend more time correcting the software than if I were to just do it myself. So, but yeah, that's if we're really getting behind the scenes now of what it's like to be a reporter. But yeah, absolutely.
Well, sure. But I was, you brought to mind how, everyone listening to the show has went through their own personal journey of, there's a town called Lethbridge.
Yep.
Like, really? Like,
yep.
Moose Jaw, Medicine Hat, like, when Chilliwack was in the league, and now this year with Wenatchee. Is Wenatchee real? Like, is that just something somebody made up?
Yeah. Well, then you got the other towns. You got the Prince Albert and Medicine Hat and Regina, which always throws people off. And yeah, there's that's just the joys of the Western Hockey League, and nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And for WHL Unfiltered listeners, keep your eyes out for some Wenatchee content coming up here. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But yeah, back here to the games we had over the weekend. I mean, the number one ranked team in all of Canada, they seem to have played up to that to those expectations. For the most part, kind of what's your broad brush, feeling about the weekend we just had.
Yeah, I think it was a really good weekend for Portland. It's a hard weekend to take a lot of kind of what is this team going to look like going forward. Kamloops on Friday night was, they're a very different looking Kamloops team than what Portland saw in the second round of the playoffs last year. Fraser Minton was kind of expected to be one of the main guys for them this year, but he's still up with the Toronto Maple Leafs and getting into a couple games already. So, there wasn't a lot there to see from Kamloops. There's a lot of turnover with guys there, but that was a big win just for the team, and they fell behind 1-0 and kind of took them a little bit to get going, but then they kind of really dominated that game kind of after the first 10 minutes or so. And then the Tri-City game on Sunday, that's a game where I don't think that's a representation of the Tri-City Americans team that we're going to see this year. That was a team that played 3 games in 3 nights with some travel. Saturday night they had played the same Kamloops Blazers and had I think it was a tie game going into the third period with them. So, and then to travel to Portland to play, like with Portland on rest, that's a tough schedule matchup. So, I would expect future Portland Tri-City games later in the season to be much closer and a much more accurate representation of what those two teams are. But yeah, there's, what's working for Portland right now though, broad brush is, I don't want to say everything, but they're getting contributions from the top of the lineup through their fourth line into all 3 D pairs. The only player I guess we haven't really seen much of yet is Luke Brunin. Jan Spunar has been he's gotten all the games so far and was just named WHL Goalie of the Week. So making I think 48 saves and had his first regular season shutout. So on Sunday night, but there's a lot to like from a Portland standpoint right now.
Yeah, just Nick Avakian got for the goalie for Tri-City for Sunday night. I was thinking it's baseball playoffs right now. I was like, did he add an infinity ERA for that one? But sitting at 8.95 goals against on the year, which is that's a tough number, man. That's
yeah.
I mean, a small sample size, but you give up, 4 goals in 7 minutes. I mean, that's and it's again not they're tired in front of them, like you're saying, and obviously a tough Portland team who's rested and not really his fault, but man, it was it was tough to watch. You felt bad for him. Yeah. I think a lot of folks probably did.
Yeah, and Avakian's had a tough go in Portland. I don't know if fans remember a couple of years ago during the COVID season, Avakian played and that was when they didn't have a backup goalie and he wasn't doing the greatest either. And so Portland had put up several goals on him as well and he had to be in there. And, I think the next time he came, he had a pretty strong performance, but overall his numbers against Portland aren't the greatest, but, I don't think there was many goals, without, going back and watching all of them that I feel like how many of those were, would he want back type of situation. Some of the, I think the first goal that Nicholas Johnson scored, I don't think there was somebody within 7 feet of him on the ice and kind of, right down the slot there. So it's hard to blame the goalies and we've had experience with that and, it's something from, building the relationship with Andy Moog over the years and just talking with some of the other people within, the Winterhawks office and hockey ops department of just, sometimes the goalies get the raw end of the deal. But they can also sometimes be the beneficiary of a really good defense in front of them too. So it's just a weird position. And, I don't think that, I think there'll be some, coming back to the means for Avakian because, he's certainly a capable, WHL goaltender. I don't think he's, going to go on and play pro, but, by all accounts, he's, good kid and, working hard and doing all those things. But, probably if he doesn't play against Portland in the VMC again, I think he'd probably be okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I tweeted this on Sunday night and it was backed up by, Bill Wilms with the Vancouver Giants that, I think there's going to be a long list of teams that have experienced kind of the same fate, coming into to this barn. It's going to be kind of a house of horrors over the course of the season. I think for most clubs, I mean, just the way that Portland could come at you in waves, and the goaltender of the week for the WHL. I mean, that's going to be prepare yourself for this, Josh. But it's like if you gave Pat Mahomes a top 5 defense in the NFL, which is also happening right now. I mean, if you can, have the defensive goaltending on top of the way that Portland likes to push the pace scoring. I mean, things are looking pretty good.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, when I was talking with Mike Johnson after the game, both on Friday, and then Kyle Gustafson after the game on Sunday, one of the things that they put up 11 goals on the weekend, but I think what they were most proud of was they only gave up one, and it was the first goal. So really after they almost went 2 full games, because that first goal that Kamloops scored was less than a minute into the game. So really they kind of almost gone 120 minutes without giving up a goal. And, I think there was 3 shots that Kamloops was credited with on Friday in the third period, and another 5 for Tri-City. So there's, I had that opposite. Tri-City had 12 in the third, excuse me. Looking at the box score wrong. But, from the number of chances that they gave up, I think as Portland has done a much better job, as these, we've talked about it for a while now, but this Portland blue line they're finally the 19-year-olds. It's always been, the four 17-year-old defensemen, 4 18-year-old defensemen. Well, they're all 19 now. So this is kind of they're kind of their primary guys now are kind of all 19, and then you got Southern and who's a little bit younger. But, this is where you're starting to see that pay off a little bit. And, I think from a defensive standpoint, and how Portland's done limiting the grade A chances on Spoonar has been a welcome adjustment from what they dealt with maybe the past 2 seasons. So
at the season ticket holder party after the game on Sunday, Mike Johnson said something to the effect of there being, I can't remember, 15 or 20 scouts in the building on Sunday night.
Yeah, I think the number was closer to 30, probably 25 to 30. But yeah, there were scouts aplenty in the building on Sunday night, and I think some of them are there was some player development guys there. I think there was some player development guys for San Jose and Philly, seeing Southern and Cagnoni. But yeah, there's Calgary scouts and Ranger scouts, and I think there was an Avalanche scout there. But yeah, there was. I think when Kurt and I were leaving the media room before warm-ups, I think there were 16 scouts that were signed in, and that's usually about 50 to 60% representation of scouts that actually check in and register. So there was a lot of eyes on this game from a scouting standpoint, but they definitely they saw an interesting game. I don't think that was maybe that's hard to take a lot from a game like that when the schedules and are so different, and one team's playing a 3-3, the other's playing 2 games and coming off rest and not having to travel. It's hard to take a lot from that game, but I think from a scouting standpoint, he's talking with some of the scouts, what they can really see is when it is a blowout like that, what sort of habits are players showing. Are they still winning puck battles? Are they still competing? Are they getting back on the back check? I think some of those types of habits and things can come out a little bit more in blowout wins and losses. Is one thing I really noticed about Tri-City and Jordan Gavin, of just that, that player just did not stop forechecking even when it was 7-0. And I think that's a young guy for Tri-City, a guy that they're going to really be trying to build around over the next couple of years. And when you're leading by example like that, I think scouts notice that type of thing. So, scouts, they're watching the game differently than a fan might be or a reporter. But they definitely saw an interesting game. But yeah, to confirm, yes, lots of scouts in the building on Sunday.
Well, here you are back in the meat and potatoes, which is what we love about you. But I mean, just but back to the fun stuff. I mean, I mean, you've been in that building a lot of times. I mean, typically like 5 or 10 scouts is kind of more of a like you're impressed if there's 10 guys there, right?
Yeah, I mean, it can vary throughout the year, but I think it can really depend upon also what else is going on. Portland is a very easy place for scouts to get to, so sometimes scouts will make their Western League scouts, at least, NHL scouts they can come to Portland on a Friday night, and then they can hit up Seattle. They can make it out to Spokane. They can, if they're going to make their way down to California or into Idaho or kind of see some of those other kind of programs or different things like that. It's an easy spot to get to with the airport being so close. But yeah, it really varies on the night, but I think the closer to 30 scouts that probably were there, or 28 scouts on Sunday, that is probably on the high end. I think the most I've seen, I think there was like 50 some for a Portland-Seattle game last year, which makes sense given the amount of players that were drafted last year from both teams, especially Seattle. But yeah, so it's hard to say, but yeah, it's definitely closer to probably closer to the 10 than it is the 5.
Well, and the first draft eligible that comes to mind is Diego Budazzoni, and
yep,
he's presumably picked a good time to get hot as far as having that kind of attention in the building, right?
Yeah, he has, and I think with Central Scouting, starting to kind of form their list, and you're starting to see some of those things come out. I think it's probably depending upon because some of those 16-year-olds that are first year draft eligibles but are in their second year of the WHL, scouts have at least seen them, and they'll kind of they're building upon their reports after what they saw as a 16. And Diego had a good 16-year-old season, but maybe not quite the numbers that he was maybe hoping for. And so, yeah, he is putting up those numbers now, but, in just talking with some of the people, it sounds like it'll probably he'll either be a C or a B ranked skater would be my guess to start the year. So B is kind of second, third round, and then C is kind of fourth, fifth, sixth round type of thing. Kind of projection wise, I think there's still some, Diego has absolutely come out on fire. He sees the opportunity to kind of play on that top line and to play alongside some of those guys, like Clausen and Stefan, and he's moved out of his center position in order to be able to do some of that. So, but yeah, Diego has had a tremendous start to his season, and one of the things I talked with Mike Johnson about on Friday, that Diego scored the goal from the right in front of the net, and that he's going to the hard areas on the ice to be able to contribute. We've seen his one-timer. We've seen his wrist shot. We know those are accurate. They're heavy. He can get it off quick. But that was, at least from a coaching staff standpoint, they were very pleased to see him get to the dirty areas and kind of score a rebound goal as opposed to kind of making a more flashy style goal.
Yeah, I mean, if you can add that to your arsenal, as far as a guy with skill and speed, and if you can, you can only have so much talent, but you can learn habits and hard work. If you put that together, I mean that's going to be pretty impressive resume for when people are watching your game. Yeah,
and Diego's gotten a chance to see last year, a guy like Robbie from Delorme, kind of see what he was able to do in front of the net and kind of be a net front presence. I don't think Diego's going to be that kind of player. He's a different style player. I think you're seeing a little bit more from, say, Luke Shelter, who's really started to use his body and his size. He's off to just a tremendous start to his season, despite not playing any of the preseason or in the Neely Cup at any of the games at all while he recovered from off-season. I think it was a wrist or a shoulder injury. But yeah, when I was talking to him after the game on Sunday, he was saying that he's like, I'm feeling really good, but I've also, I've gotten used to not having a long lead up and coming back from injuries. He's broken both wrists since he's been in Portland. And, so it's just one of those where he's starting to kind of figure it out a little bit, but that's a guy who, going back to some of the success that's out there, when you can have, Luke Shelter, who's one of Portland's kind of heaviest, kind of bigger body guys to really. I mean, he's got 9 points in 7 games, he had 14 of all of last year. Granted he was injured a little bit, but you can't. This is the type of steps the coaching staff is looking for guys to take, and and then it just keeps going down the line. Hudson Darby gets a pair of goals, a couple C&I shots, but they get into the net. You got Nick Johnson who's putting up some goals and some points now in his second season, and just kind of your fourth line and third line are over a point a game players for Portland right now, and I think that's everything you can ask for from this Winterhawks team.
Yeah, you mentioned Hudson Darby. It was only, last week when I was speaking to Chad Leslie, the GM of the Swift Current Broncos, that I realized that Regan Darby was in this league, and it was only about an hour ago I realized that his son is on the Winterhawks. So I'm kind of I'm the last one of the party on some of this stuff sometimes, but I saw Hudson and Griffin's dad play in the minors and. Back in the IHL in the 90s, so that was a player I was familiar with that I was kind of forgotten history for the most part, but maybe what's old is new again, but and that's the thing too, though. We talk about the scoring by committee, and that's definitely a thing that's probably going to have come up constantly this season for this Winterhawks team, and like we've talked about before, usually it's a thing you settle for. It's not a thing you would choose. It's kind of like, well, we just don't have any stars. But, when Budazzoni has, Budazzoni's one player, but I mean, you're talking about Shelter, with 9 points and Chizowski with 8 points. And, these are air quotes, bottom 6 guys that, your fourth and fifth leading scorers are not playing on the top lines whatsoever. I mean, like you can really live with that. I mean, that's going to be extremely hard to shut down over the long run.
100% it is, and what makes Portland so challenging to play against is their lines are so different from the first line through the fourth line. There's so many different aspects to it. Stefan, Klaus, and Budazzoni on the top line. You got Stefan, who's just a sniper. You got Budazzoni, who's emerging. Clausen's kind of just a do-it-all type of player. Then you throw the second line, and you get the playmaking of O'Brien, the just sheer speed and skating ability of New and Zakreski, who's kind of turning a little bit into a power forward. They bring a different dynamic, and then from there, Johnson rolls out his third line of Shelter, Johnson, and Chizowski, and you got 2 bigger body wingers in Shelter and Johnson out there, and then Chizowski, who's just a bulldog out there trying to get the puck when he doesn't have it, and just guys that are going to the front of the net. That just makes it a challenge, and they're built differently than the other 2 lines. And then Portland's fourth line over the weekend just, I think, had probably their best weekend in Yaremko, Darby, and Jockums. And Darby got a pair of goals, and I think there's some assists in there for the other 2. But they drew a power play. Mike Johnson gave them a look on a couple of the power plays as well towards the end of the Kamloops game, and then also to start the third period, I think in the Tri-City game they got a look on the power play as well. So that scoring by committee, when last year we kind of talked about it like, all right, who's going to be the guy tonight, and that's kind of a similar case for Portland now, but they're putting it in the net with a lot more consistency, and it causes a nightmare of a matchups. And that was one of the things when I talked to Dennis Williams after the Everett game, is he's like, Portland's a hard team to match up against because I don't know which D pair do I want to put up against. Do I try and shut down the Clausen Stefan line, or do I try and shut down the O'Brien Newen line? Like, where do you put your your top pair and your best defensive forwards? It's not like, these other teams, some of these other teams that have just a really strong, top line in a way like Tri-City is somewhat built, where you can kind of stack that against that line and okay, from a matchup standpoint, these are the guys we're going to put out to check against that line, and here's the D pair that we're always going to want to try and match up against. Portland just has a matchup nightmare for opposing coaches as they try and figure out how to slow down this train that is the Winterhawks right now.
Well, and then you have, a series of some rough stuff, on Sunday night, which, maybe we can get into that too. Maybe that's an element to this team too, because it seems like they've been, all these games have had spice in the chili, it seems like, but, so it kind of throws the lines in a blender, and they come out there with Stefan O'Brien and Gabe Clausen on the line, and I was like, well, that's one I hadn't seen before, but you could do that, and you could go to that anytime you wanted to, really. And I'm like, that's, that would be, difficult to contend with. And if you did, again, if Dennis Williams wants to throw his assets towards that, then, you got guys who can slot in after that. So it's kind of, back to the thing that, I always give them credit for, that they tend to spread it around a little bit. And that's going to be beneficial, in the long run. But yeah, you could load up that top line if you wanted to, with 320s, and we saw that a little bit on Sunday night, even if they didn't really need it, or it's just kind of the flow of the game with guys in the box.
Yeah, and that's one thing that Johnson, especially early in the season, he's going to mix and match his lines. I would be willing to bet these aren't how the lines finish to start the year, or what the playoff lines are going to look like. It's about finding who plays well with one another, and who's going well, and does someone need to pick me up, and or whatever it might be. But yeah, Johnson's got options, and there's enough of that mixing and matching that you can do that. You can really start to kind of find some of the chemistry. Clausen and Stefan have shown, all year so far, just this remarkable amount of chemistry. And, and O'Brien and Stefan have a long history of playing together. And, and Chizowski's a player who, I think on most teams, he's easily in the top six. And so he's a dynamic player to have on the third line, but he's a player that, if someone's in the box or they just need to mix things up a little bit or need an energy shift, Chizowski's a guy who can easily slide up in the lineup as well. But yeah, Portland is they're a unique team this year, and they're a veteran group. And what's crazy, and I was talking to some people about this after the game on Sunday, is we still haven't seen the full Portland roster and what they're going to look like. Yet, because when Davies was in, Newen was out. Now Newen's back in, Davies is out. Which it sounds like Davies might be able to go on Wednesday. They're gonna try for it when they play against Brandon. Suffered a lower body injury, and sounds like he's close. He was in a full contact sweater, but didn't necessarily always participate in some of those drills. But he'll be. I think he's close. They're trying to. They held O'Brien out last weekend or 2 weekends ago when he was battling an illness. Like, they're just not risking some of these things. But you've got Kyle McDonough and Ryan Miller sitting in the wings as well, and there's high hopes for both of those players as well. And there's a lot of moving parts here, and that's even before if Johnson elects to make any sort of move to kind of bolster his lineup. But they were definitely fired up on Sunday. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, if there was ever a time when you can afford to, take your time with bringing guys back, if there's any sort of question if they can play or not, it's right now. Like you're saying, yep. I mean, they might not have a lot of extra guys in numbers, but the quality is over, comes before the quantity here, in that you slot very, very skilled hockey players in at any position. And so I don't think they're in any hurry or shouldn't be anyway, to rush anybody back. And with this a good Wheat Kings team coming in here, which I'm excited to see. I mean, we didn't do that for however long. I don't know when the last time the Wheat Kings were here, but what a classic Western League franchise, and even post Kelly McCrimmon and all that. But fun to come in here. But and then that's the last time that we're going to see this team in the Rose City for some time after that.
Yeah, Portland's got they're getting ready to go on their really long Eastern/Central swing, depending upon what you want to call it. But yeah, this Brandon team they're going to be a fun team. I'll tell you, they've got 3 NHL drafted players on their team. Bjarnson in goal, and then Nate Danielson, who's a first-round pick of the Red Wings, and then Brett Hyland, who's a Capitals draft. I don't know where his rights stand at the moment, but he was a Capitals draft pick. But Nate Danielson is definitely a player to keep an eye on for Portland. I was talking with Kyle Gustafson about that. Kind of what they're expecting out of this Brandon team on Wednesday. And, I think when I was looking at their roster, I think they've got 9 first-round Bantam picks on their team, 11 if you count the 2 first-round imports that they have as well. So this is a talented group. This is a Brandon team that has kind of been in the rebuild mode now for a little bit, and they're kind of, I don't want to say a year away, but, they've got a lot of 04s as well. But they've also got a good group of 18-year-olds, and so this, I think we're going to learn a lot more about the Portland team and kind of how they are going to function, and what how is their structure going to look like when they go up against a team that is I don't necessarily say rested, but is maybe a little bit more prepared is not the right word for it. I'm struggling to find the words tonight with that, but it's going to present a different challenge than, let's just say, than what Tri-City threw against them on Sunday. So, I think, Brandon will still have travel, because I'm pretty sure, I'm trying to remember from my prep work that I was doing yesterday, but I think they play in Seattle on Tuesday and then Portland on Wednesday. So I think Portland will still get another team on a back-to-back. But, Brandon's an interesting team, and they're going through their U.S. division swing right now.
The first year that Mike Johnson took over this team, first full season, and obviously they were in real bad shape before that, and it was about this time of the year, and there was a lot of optimism and started to have some success. And the Wheat Kings came to town, and they were actually hosting that year. And I remember, Portland looked real good. I think they won that game, if memory serves. And, I remember hearing somebody say, that we saw, one team that's going to be in the Memorial Cup this year. Maybe we saw 2, And, premature or whatever, but, I mean, it's kind of like, at that time, hope springs eternal. And, it's kind of... I'm probably the only guy thinking about it like this, but, the Wheat Kings coming to town as a measuring stick, same time of year, we've kind of had the whole world had a reset, including this hockey team. And so it's kind of like, maybe, it's a smaller measuring stick than at that point. But, let's, I'm excited to see how that game goes. And then, and this long road trip too. I mean, there's
a long trip.
Yeah, and in addition to a couple of a U.S. team on the way out, a couple of BC teams on the way back. I you might know more than me, but I don't think they're. I mean, I think that's all part of the same road trip. I don't think they're gonna come back to town for a day or two and then head back out again.
Correct. They're gonna do the Everett game on Saturday, come back, and then they'll depart for Red Deer and Edmonton later next week. So. They'll break it up a little bit, but yeah, I don't think they're going to come back after the Lethbridge game. I think they'll head right to Kamloops, or they'll turn it into a team bonding event on their way west across Canada to, maybe they'll end up at one of the ranches that they've been at before, where they, are doing different, team building exercises and things like that. I know Mike Johnson loves these long road trips at the earlier part of the season, really helps with team bonding and things like that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. After Wednesday, they don't play again at home until I think it's November 17th. So almost a full month between home games for the Winterhawks.
I mean, it is a month. It's the 18th to 17th,
Oh yeah, I suppose. Yep.
I thought and I wondered about that, and I kind of wondered if you had that inside information as far as, after the Everett game on Saturday, then they don't have to be in Red Deer until the the next weekend. And I wondered if they would just go from there, or
No, they're going to come back. So I think they're going to leave on Tuesday or Wednesday. I think right now I haven't heard the final deal, but they're going to try and split it up at least a little bit. But they're not. They're coming back after the game on Saturday, and then they'll leave probably, like I said, either Tuesday or Wednesday of next week to go to Alberta.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's always, they consistently go this time of year, like you mentioned that Mike likes to do that. And you get ahead of the snow. You have your team building. I mean, it makes sense in a lot of different ways, but for the fans, I mean, you just had a couple of games to get accustomed to this team, and then boom, they're off again for a while. So sometimes it can be, you're a little frustrating to not have any hockey, live hockey anyway for a while. But I always like those, especially the video package gets better every year, and some of these barns have good equipment, and you get it these other play-by-play guys that we're not necessarily familiar with, and it's I mean, I love all of it, but it is kind of tough to not get to go to games for a while.
Yeah, that part is challenging. I think the streaming package is still a work in progress. There's some parts that are really smooth, and there are other parts that are not. I'm looking forward to, I think some of the video product coming out of Edmonton and Calgary, at least from other games and feeds I've seen, have been pretty good. They've got they're in NHL buildings, so that always makes a big difference. I think Red Deer's had a good, if I remember right, they've had a good production in the past, but I can't speak for Medicine Hat, Swift Current, and Lethbridge, but yeah, it is challenging, but also from if you look at some of Portland's, attendance over the last 4 games, like I don't think they've gotten over 4,500 yet for a game. So, I think they're competing there's a lot of things to compete against right now. So from the ticket office standpoint, I think they'd like to keep up the momentum a little bit, but if I remember right, I don't think they drew 3,000 fans for the Tri-City game on Sunday. So, it's you're competing against college football, you're competing against high school football and other different activities right now, and I think it's usually around after Christmas when Portland's attendance starts to kind of climb a little bit. So yeah, as frustrated as it is to not see live hockey for a month from an attendance standpoint and bottom line dollars, I think the organization is probably okay punting some of those games to later in the year.
Yeah, I have the numbers open in front of me already.
Okay.
And,
you do? Okay.
And you're correct. They were 50 people short of 3,000.
Gotcha. Okay.
On Sunday.
I knew it was close. I just remember seeing a 2 to start the number when I was looking at the game sheet towards the end of the night. So yeah.
Almost there. A few of us would have brought a couple friends, but
yeah, I've been working on the +1 for a while. It's not quite worked out quite yet, but
that's the only move I have. Hey,
yeah.
What are you doing Friday? You want to go to a hockey game? But
yeah, exactly.
And I've had luck, but
yeah, you've done much better in that category than I have, but I digress.
But yeah, I mean, 4,200 the first night, and then right at 4,000 the second 2 games, and then the last game just under 3. But yeah, I mean, they feel, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's I'm an eternal optimist, but it always feels like a good crowd even at 4,000. But
yeah, I think 4,000 is kind of the number that I think really 5,000 is probably a better. Like once they hit that's when that building really is electric and comes alive. I think the home opener crowd was pretty spectacular. I thought they were into the game, from the get go. That there was a little more corporate-y feel on the game against Vancouver. Just my own opinion on that. It didn't seem like fans were as engaged, and some of that can be that it's not the opponent, and people know Everett a little bit more and things like that. But yeah, it's still it's one of those where Portland, like 4,000, getting 4,000 fans is not a bad thing. I think they're probably most barns and most teams would probably love to have 4,000 fans, but when you've got a stadium like the Coliseum, it looks just empty, and that's the part that's sometimes challenging. Is the fans are spread out so much too, and so when you only have like you're saying, just what you said, 2950 or something like that for Sunday's game, and it's when you spread them out across that big arena, it's not like when you're playing in Kent or some of these other barns where it's just one lower bowl and everyone's kind of stacked on top of each other. It can sometimes feel a little cavernous, but they definitely, the fans were into it, at least for the first couple of games. I think this past weekend maybe not quite as much, at least from my seat, but you're probably more in tune to some of that than I am, because I'm so focused on reporting on the game, and I always end up I'm looking at so many different things throughout the night, and usually fan interaction is probably one of the last things I'm looking at, to be fair.
Yeah, no, that's always the Looney Tunes cartoon angel of the devil over the one shoulder and the angel over the other shoulder. For me, it's I'm a fan. I pay to get in. I have fun, but I'm also, and that directly competes with my analyst hat that I'm wearing, and also where I happen to be sitting in the rink, which is varied wildly so far in the first couple of games. Sometimes I'm here, sometimes I'm there, and that's the exact same thing. Like there's if I'm down in the corner against the glass, that's more fun as a fan, but man, I really couldn't tell who set up that goal on the far end. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yep.
So that's always being quasi media like I am. It's kind of can be tricky to make all those Venn diagrams overlap, but. We talk about the juice in the crowd, and that's kind of dovetails into something I wanted to touch on earlier. That these games have been kind of have some hockey violence to them, and it seems like all the home games so far have had some jump and some rough stuff, and people tend to like that and gravitate towards that. But I feel like it's a small sample size, but I think it's enough to look at a trend that it seems like this current group of Winterhawks isn't really interested in taking anybody's shit.
Yeah, they've definitely been standing up for one another, and I'll tell you, some of that is a Josh Davies influence. We talked a lot about number 71 on the last time I was on with you, I think a couple of weeks ago. But he and he's missed some of these games, but Davies he has taken on a leadership role, and I can tell you from practices and things and talking with other people, like he's holding, I don't want to call it clinics, but it's kind of like what Ludwig did when he was here, where he was kind of showing guys how to, not necessarily how to fight, but just kind of how to handle yourselves in kind of the rough, tough situations and things like that. And so, when you see Darby drop the gloves, and I looked up into where Davies was sitting and with the scratches, and he had a big smile on his face and clapping as he cheered his teammate on and things like that. So I think there's a lot of that fun for fans when you see Marcus Nguyen drop the gloves. Like, I was trying to remember the last time he had a fight, but he saw his teammate take a knee and he didn't hesitate and he jumped in there. And when you have Darby to kind of a similar situation of standing up for a teammate, they just don't put up with it, and they felt disrespected by Bell putting the puck into the net. And I liked kind of your tweet of there's hockey code, and it got stepped on a little bit, and Kurt had a great tweet or comment of that's maybe the biggest check we've seen Luca Cagnoni throw, and it just kind of exploded on the guy along the wall afterwards, and there was a lot of rough stuff, and I think Tri-City was frustrated, so that plays some of it into it. And but yeah, I mean, we've seen some of that rough stuff in all the games so far, and I think when teams they're going to try and get under Portland's skin, because they're not going to be able to keep pace with, at least most of these teams, they're not going to be able to keep up with Portland's speed. And how you do that is you kind of get under their skin, you try and take guys off, and you try and trade one guy for another, and but like we saw, sometimes the 4-on-4s can burn teams, because now Portland's got more time and space to be able to generate their speed through the neutral zone. So there's we're seeing guys that don't normally maybe participate in some of that stuff really starting to kind of stand up for one another.
Well, you mentioned two particular incidents that don't know if incident's the right word, but occurrences, that I feel were significant. And yeah, the knee, and then Nguyen grabbing a guy and feeding him some rights. I mean, there's probably room for a bigger debate on hockey fights in general, hockey fights in a junior league where guys are some of them are under 18. They aren't as opposed to grown-ups, adults playing a professional game and all of that. But personally, I like the idea that if you are to step out of line, that you can be held accountable physically. And yep. I still think that's important. And I think knee on knee, is that kind of situation. And I get that, they lost the power play because of the unsportsmanlike. And I also kind of, side note, I like that that's how the game has evolved, that we'll throw an unsportsmanlike on there as opposed to an instigator.
Yep.
Because obviously the knee was the instigator. That's what started it.
Right.
And so, but I get that they want to discourage it, and so you can stand up for your guy, but you're going to lose the power play, and I think that's a fair trade as well, because what's the alternative, right? So if a guy sticks his knee out, and the whole point of that being wrong is there could be a serious injury there, and so. You can put your hands in your pockets and hope they make the right call and hope you score on a power play. But, I think if you want to discourage that kind of behavior, I think that, again, holding a guy to account physically, I feel like is a better way to discourage it than, setting him in the box.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of self-policing a little bit. And it's how bonds are formed.
100%.
Yeah, and it's how bonds are formed amongst teammates. Like, you can stand up for somebody, and Darby earned a lot of respect. I'll tell you that. Like, he already had the respect of the locker room. But when you see a young guy like that step up and drop the mitts and kind of defend a teammate, it kind of builds that camaraderie a little bit more. And I think where I was frustrated, and I try not to harp on the officials too much, but the game against Tri-City got more out of hand than it needed to, because they just kept evening everything up. And we saw it with the Jack O'Brien kind of retaliatory penalty where he came over and kind of shoved the guy, and the ref called him for a roughing. I'm like, he didn't hit him in the face. He didn't get his stick up. He pushed him with his glove. Like, trying not to be too much of a Portland homer with that. But you kind of look at it and you go, why are they evening this up? I think we saw it in the Kamloops game at one point where Kamloops defended their player and they lost a power play. So I don't think it always has to be a let's even it up. Like, hey, if this guy started it, then I think that should be punished. In terms of the other team getting a power play. Now, I still think you give Nguyen 2 minutes for an unsportsmanlike conduct, but give the other guy a 2 minute for a roughing as well. Like, it's a tough spot, because I think you still have to, like, you were going to, like, when you blew the whistle with the intention to call a penalty. And then now you're getting into the fact that a bunch of other stuff happened. And I thought there was too much evening it up in the Portland Tri-City game. And if the officials would have just started taking one guy out of the scrum instead of two, and coincidental minors, I think maybe some of that stuff starts to die down a little bit. But it's a weird dynamic right now. But the game is definitely changing. My stance on it. I've said it till I'm blue in the face. I think until you're 18, you should have to wear a cage or a fishbowl. I just think these kids they're kids, right? The 16s and the 17s, they're still kids. They're not adults, and you got your whole life ahead of you, and you're gonna, you just got to protect yourself. And I don't know, I don't know when it happened, but Sotis has got a pretty significant injury that he's dealing with. That I don't know if a cage or a shield would have changed that or not for him. But you just worry about some of those guys, and the fighting is a tough element with that, and you probably can't do that if you're wearing a cage or a fishbowl. But you just you worry about some of that with just how young these guys are in their future, but it's also part of hockey. It's how guys earn roster spots. It's also how they, if you don't get a chance to kind of practice fighting or develop your fighting skills or defending yourself now, and then you go play pro and you're trying to learn it on the fly, how well set up are you? There's just so many different factors with that, but I absolutely didn't mind the physicality of things. You just hope both teams, for the most part, left that game still healthy and no one's going to miss any time as a result of any of the post whistle activities, if you will.
Yeah. No, you made 17 different points there, and I can't say
I'm so good. I'm a long-winded man. I'm long-winded. Yeah.
I can't say I disagree with much of it, but I mean, to get down to the nuance, I mean, yeah, if you've got to wear a cage, for 2 years, and that may make sense. It's like, do you got to put you put the stop sign on the back of the jerseys when they're, in midget or whatever. Like, do you got to put one on like the left side of the collar, like where you would grab it for a fight, to put a stop sign on the 17s and not the 18s, like.
Right.
But but yeah, and maybe we shouldn't have these underage kids fighting. Well, then tell them not to stick their goddamn knee out. I mean, if that's going to be the thing, but and that's one thing I really liked about the Newen play is I'm sitting next to my girlfriend. She says, "Well, he doesn't fight guys. It's not his thing." And I was like, "He was the closest guy."
Yep.
And that's even more respect from me personally, because I'm like, that's not a thing that he does. It's not a card he has to play. But if you're the closest guy and you're standing up for your guy, that's your that's your role. And he acquitted himself very well, I felt. And and then you go down that rabbit hole too. That when the star player breaks his hand on the side of a guy's helmet or whatever, like then everybody looks dumb, and like that's another argument against the code and the self-policing of it. But it's for the rest of the times that it doesn't happen, and you talk about the Hudson Darby play. I mean, back to we talked about earlier, I've seen his dad fight all kinds of guys,
right.
in the pros, so they are grown men at that point, at least legally. And but so he comes from a long line of taking care of that element of the game. But to be fair too, at that point, is a lot of it was gratuitous. He wasn't, Papa Darby there. He wasn't getting a lot of ice time, and so he tried to make the most of it when he could. And so a lot of those fights didn't need to happen. They were just kind of there, And so there's the entertainment element of that, but. Do we need fights for entertainment? And that's a whole different side of the thing. Like that's
right.
Not, I have definitely seen that. And sometimes it's fun, but at what cost? And so then there's a whole, again, that's probably a longer conversation for a different time. But, I think we touched on a lot of the points, and it's like anything else. I mean, it's both things can be true, and you don't have to take one side or the other necessarily if you can, try to, on the one hand, on the other hand, and I think me on and off the ice. It's kind of how I try to look at things. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you're spot on, and it's an important discussion to have, and you're right. Like I don't think there's a wrong or a right side to it, and I think we're seeing in other junior leagues where fighting has been taken out. It's I worry about some of those cheap shots because you're not held accountable, and I hate to use a Mighty Ducks 2 line, but when those big bad Iceland players get thrown into the penalty box, they, one of their lines is 2 minutes, well worth it, right? Like if you can, some of those guys are just I worry about what the game will turn into if there isn't some of that self-policing and accountability. So I kind of talk out of both sides of my mouth a little bit with it, but I definitely think that fighting has a time and a place, and it can certainly change momentum of the game. It can get fans involved. It brings the casuals to their feet as well. So, for the most part, I don't have a problem with anything that happened. I don't think anybody was malicious with it. I think you see more often than not, probably 9 times out of 10, the guys will pat each other on the back, and when they go to the box, or they'll kind of give a tip of the hat to each other. And, very rarely are you seeing guys still after a fight still yelling at each other in the box. And, that's usually, there's more that's led up to it than one singular incident. But it's one of those where, it's just, it's part of hockey, and it's part of the code, and there's unwritten rules, and there's some unwritten rules that need to be changed. And then there are others that can probably remain. And I think, at least from my standpoint, fighting is one of them.
Well, for me personally, when I was, junior hockey age, I never played the game, but when I was that age, I had no concept of consequences, and unless somebody was going to beat them into me, and that's a real thing. Like, I thought I could get away with whatever, and until somebody showed me that I couldn't get away with that. And so maybe I just kind of apply that to the kids today. But I probably wouldn't have pushed so hard if I would have had to answer in a physical manner like that. And so maybe that's just kind of my learned experiences applying to it. But either way, we've spent some time talking about that. But that being said, if you want to again oversimplify things, well, if they got a very skilled, and experienced defense. They have the goalie of the week. You have a very deep scoring by committee, and they're mean. What more do you want out of a hockey team right now?
Right. Yeah. It's a fun team to watch because, where I sit, there's a couple of fans that'll hear yell, "Hit somebody," right? And there's not been a lot of that this year, whether or not those fans are at the games or not, but Portland is finishing the check. They're fun to watch. They're jumping up in the play. We got, I like to, joke with a couple of other guys on the media row there, and just like power forward Ulster activated, and, seeing him down low, and Josh Morey on Sunday beat out an icing call. And I'm like, that's a 19-year-old defenseman who just beat out an icing call. Like, that's the type of player that Josh Morey is. Kurt called that out in one of his tweets. So if people aren't following Kurt, please do, because he's got a lot of good insight. But, it's just there's some of those things right now of, even going back to the Kamloops game. The Everett game, former Kamloops, Caden Hamill. But in that Everett game where Josh Davies sent, Hamill into the wall, and, Kyle is one of the photographers, Kyle Smitsky. I can never pronounce his last name. Sorry, Kyle, if you're listening. But, he took a photo right before the hit, and it was at that moment he realized he screwed up, right? Like, it was just one of those just iconic photos that are out there. Winterhawks have such great team photographers, Keith and Matt and Megan as well. But it's this team. There's just so much to like about this group, and fans are starting to get the spoon chant or the spoon chant. When Spoonar makes a save and holds on to the puck, and their dynamic on the power play. Luca Cagnoni's type of player who's got the never let him know your next move type of approach to the game. And you're absolutely right. Enjoy this brand of hockey that Portland's playing right now, and you'll have to do it from WHL Live here in the future. But on Wednesday, I don't know if people are going to try and get down there early, but not to throw it to a shameless plug, but if people want to get down there early, is there a spot they can hit up?
Well, first off, you do want to get down early because there's some sort of concert in
good point.
In the Moda Center. And so that's a great opportunity to try to get down to see our friends down at Cartside, which, by the way, I've been kind of soft launching it for them. I have no authorization to share this information with you guys, but they are going to be an official watch party for the road games.
Very nice.
I don't think they're quite set up for it yet, so that's kind of, I think, why there hasn't been an official announcement. But I feel like folks want some time to think about it and digest that information and think about, like it would be fun to go down there, as opposed to, hey, there's a game tonight. Well, I just found that out. Like, I don't want to,
right.
And so that way you have time to think about it. And I was talking to, my buddy Bear that runs the place, this last weekend. And yeah, they're getting set up, and I was like, I think your timing's pretty good because that Eastern Swing's coming up. Yep. And so we'll see if I assume they'll be up and running by then, but how those things go. But just keep that in mind. But when you do make it down the Cartside, you tell them listen to the show, and they'll give you happy hour pricing on drinks, which is pretty nice, especially compared to rose quarter prices. So, and they've definitely got room for you. I know we were down there on Sunday night, and it was pretty much just hockey fans. There's jerseys of all, like you get in a junior rink, jerseys of all shapes and sizes and colors. And
yep. It's one of the benefits of junior hockey, right? It's not just everybody wearing the same jersey or the same 3 jerseys. It's you get favorite players, favorite teams, current players, former players. I've even seen a couple future players. Like I was like, wait, what? What am I like? So there's some of those types of players that are out there. There was a jersey foul that I saw. I saw a Bedard Canadiens jersey, which I thought was a little weird. I
didn't see that guy.
So. Yeah, if you see that guy, ask him what he's doing, because that was I was trying to snap a photo without making it obvious, but I was like, what? It's like I don't think that's how that works. So, but yeah, you're right. You see absolutely everything in that. But shout out to that guy. If you're that guy, hit me up because I'd love to write a quick story on why you're wearing a Bedard Canadiens jersey to a Winterhawks game. But yeah, more power to you if you can.
Yeah, you get the folks that they like this particular player on the Winterhawks and went to whatever pro team. I don't care about that pro team, but I'm backing this player, and which I've thought about those things myself, but yeah, no, it's a fun time down the rink and affordable, especially if you have the right pregame spot. And yeah, well, this road trip's gonna be fun. We'll have to figure out what to do with this particular show. I've got some ideas. Yeah. We'll see what happens with it. But and obviously, Josh, where do we get your writing at?
Yeah, so I'm at pnwhockeytalk.com. You can check out any of our stories there. I'm working on a pretty big piece that I'm going to try and, I wouldn't say break some news, but I think it'll be one that'll be of interest to any fans that attend Winterhawks games in person. I think you'll enjoy the next story that's probably going to hit the website there. Got a couple other stories, like I mentioned at the start, that I'm working on some features that are kind of beyond just the normal, what's going on the ice, and kind of some stuff away from the ice, and kind of what makes the hockey operations department tick. So we've got some good stuff in the pipeline coming there. I know Kurt's working on a couple of things as well, so he'll have some stuff on pnwhockeytalk.com as well for in the near future. But and then on Twitter or X or whatever it's called, I don't think I can't get over that. And I unfortunately paid to become a verified member so I could have access to the tweet deck or whatever that I use to live tweet the games, and it's just absolutely ruined my experience, because now the tweet that I tried to send on Friday that the game had gone final posted like an hour and a half afterwards, and the tweets will post like 2 minutes after I hit send, and I'm like, it's not live tweeting if you're 2 minutes behind. Like, that's not how this works. But maybe the people who follow me and stream at the same time maybe appreciate it. But I don't know. It's been chaotic. But anyway, back to squirrel shiny object here with Josh. That's what you get with me. But on whatever platform you want to call that, it's JJCRITZER. So yeah. I hope that you follow me there. It's I'm back and forth. I keep getting the notification of congratulations, you've reached 1,000 followers. I think I've gotten that about 14 times now. So because I go like on non-game days, I'm like at 1,002. And then on game days, I think people are sick of my tweets because I drop back down to like 998 or something like that. So I'll keep getting these push notifications from Twitter. Congratulations, you've reached 1,000 followers. And then it's I'm like, I already got this. So yeah, it's kind of fun. But yeah, that's how you can follow along.
There's a lot of bots and
of course, yeah,
porn scams and stuff.
Yeah.
If you want, Josh, I can go back and I don't do a lot of editing on this stuff, but I can go back and cut out the part where you paid him if you want me to.
It's you can leave that in. I don't care. It's one of those where like one of the first options that they give you, now we're really getting into it, but when the first, like after I signed up, because I had no idea what I was doing when I signed up, and I was like, I really don't want to do this, but I had some budget from some of my sponsors and supporters of PNW Hockey Talk, and so I had some sponsorship dollars. I was like, well, I really would like to have TweetDeck, and again, that's kind of peeling back the curtain a little bit, but the first option it gives you after you purchase it is the ability to hide that you purchased it. I'm like, wait a minute here. So
really?
You're so proud. Yeah, it
Really?
gives you the option to hide your blue check mark that you paid for it. I'm like, you're really proud of the $84 that I just paid you right now that you don't want people to see it, because it's like, would you like to hide your blue check mark? I'm like, I don't know. So yeah, it's a weird platform right now. That's for sure.
Yes,
but it's the platform that we have, and it allows, as right and wrong and weird and frustrating as it is, it's a platform that's allowed me to do what I do and get my articles and stuff out there, and be able to interact with fans and answer questions and things like that. So as much as I like to rip on it, I also, if I didn't have it, I kind of would be a little disappointed. So
your experience is very common. I'm the same way. I mean, it's so handy for being able to talk about the game in real time. Like, what did you see on this goal? I like the way this player is playing. Something interesting happened in this other game we're following at the same time. Like, it's such a handy resource, and to just constantly screw it up from the top for no good reason is frustrating. And and something I want to circle back around to, and I think you gave me a good segue. So you do have good sponsors over there at PNW Hockey Talk. Any particular wineries in downtown Sherwood?
Yeah, appreciate that. Jay Rouse and Sellers, he's look at us just lobbing softballs to each other, right? Slow pitch adult softball on a Monday night in October, but Jay Rouse and Sellers in downtown Sherwood, he's got a wonderful tasting room there. He's just opened up his new location up on Parrot Mountain as well, and had a chance to go up there and help him a little bit with fall harvest, and he's got some great wines coming, and boutique style wines, quality over quantity, very family atmosphere as far as the tasting room goes. And a lot of some of these wineries that you go to, they give you a 1 ounce pour and not a drop more. And I like that they kind of can sometimes be a little more heavy-handed on their tasting pours, which is nice. But yeah, Jared's been a good friend of mine since I moved out here 8 years ago, and when I launched PNW Hockey Talk, and even at my time with Dub Network in the past, he's always supported me and helped fund this. And I might try and get up to Everett, and he helps cover that and make it possible, and covers some of the website fees and things like that. So. And then Portland Window Coverings is another group that has come on board when I launched PNW Hockey Talk, and they're actually the ones that helped fund the Twitter purchase. So if you need any window coverings, check out Portland Window Coverings. But they're just another group of people that just are they're passionate about hockey and things going on in Portland, and it's not we don't this, you don't get into coverage junior hockey to make money, but anything you can do to kind of help those that are supporting to make shows like this possible, and just kind of just support those that and even any of the sponsors of the Winterhawks too, like just do what you can to try and pay it back to those groups, because they are taking a chance, and we really appreciate what they do for us to allow us to provide some of this content to you guys.
All right, Josh. Well,
yeah,
I really appreciate your time, and it's hard to I can't do a show without a guest, and you've always been there for me, so I appreciate your time and insight on the junior hockey.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always the house band is available, like I like to say about myself, the house band. And hope to see you all around the rink.